Hey everyone, it's George Couros. Welcome back to another episode of the Innovator's Mindset podcast, a solo episode. And I just wanted to share some insights and some ideas, some thinking about some of the stuff I'm doing. And strangely enough, the podcast I'm going to talk about today is really why open reflection is a really powerful practice. And the reason why I find it fascinating is because this is what I'm doing right now. This is not a podcast to get clicks, to get views, but it's just me kind of articulating some ideas, really kind of digging deeper into them. And as someone who works with schools and districts and organizations, blessed all over the world, I have this kind of rule that unless I write about it, I don't talk about it. Because writing gives me an opportunity to really think about my ideas and dig deeper into them and really kind of articulate them in a way that I don't think I could without it. And there's reasonings behind this. But before I get into those three, and this is based on an email that I wrote, which is kind of fascinating because I'm writing, and I'll say over the years, one of the things that I've kind of changed is sometimes I'll actually write and then do a podcast, and sometimes I'll do a podcast and then I'll write. So I'm really trying to utilize this space to do some open reflection, to learn in a different way. But before I get into those three reasons why open reflection is really, really powerful, I'm currently doing a cohort on professional learning and creating spaces that are really, really valuable to the staff that we serve. And one of the things that was focused on, because we really want not necessarily buy-in, but ownership, not the feeling of ownership, but true ownership over the process. And I'm reading through some of the comments and some of the questions that people have. And one of them was like, how do we get people to really feel their voices heard? And before I get into these three things, the reason I think this is a really powerful thing is that sometimes what we do, we focus on hearing voices, but not actually doing anything with the information. And I'll give you an example of this. I see all these student voice conferences, and we all pat ourselves back. It's like, oh, we listen to our students, and it's like, yeah, you maybe listen to them, but did you do anything with that information? So one of the things that I say, not only for students, but for staff, for communities, is when we hear them, do they know that how we've considered their feedback and what we've done because of it? So I'll give you an example of this. On my staff, when I was an assistant principal and principal, I would always, ask teachers and staff members feedback on initiatives that we were considering. And I would often ask staff that I knew would challenge the ideas, that would push back. And I would say, like, hey, we're thinking about this. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me what you would do different, what you're against, what you think is great. And the people that we ask often say, well, I don't like this. This is an issue. This is an issue, which is why we asked them, because we wanted to know who would push back against this and why. And so I remember one time in particular, I shared this with a staff member, and she said, here's the issue. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. And I said, hey, just give me a week, and I'll talk to you then. And I'm going to see if I tweak it. I want to get your thoughts. So I remember actually listening, so many great thoughts being shared, so many things that I didn't actually consider. And so she came back a week later, and I said, hey, here's the things that we've did based on your feedback. What do you think now? I love it. Well, of course she loves it because we've embedded her feedback in the process. And then she became an advocate for this as well. It's the same thing that's true with parents and students. When we ask for their voice, when we ask for them to share their ideas, do we act upon what they say? And do they see their feedback embedded in the solutions moving forward? Because I think that's a really important thing that we need to consider in these practices. So this is why that reflection is really, really important. But here's another thing too. Sometimes we can't act upon their voice. We can't change things based on what they're saying for whatever reason. I don't know why. So even having the conversation, say, listen, I really appreciated that, and we can't do this because of A, B, and C. And actually articulating that is really, really important to kind of consider. So it's not just about hearing people's voice, but what do you do with that information? How do you utilize it moving forward? I think is a really important consideration, and something that we need to talk about more, because I don't waste my time asking me for feedback if you're not going to do anything with it. And even if you don't agree with it, tell me why you don't. Tell me what the issue is, what you're against. But if you're just going to make a decision based on, and it doesn't matter what I'm saying, don't waste my time. Just do what you're going to do. Maybe that's a horrible thing to say, but I'm time is so sacred to me, and I think it's so sacred to people. If you're going to ask for thoughts and ideas, what are you doing with those thoughts and ideas, and connect with that. And I wanted to share this because I'm trying to articulate my answer to this person in the cohort and really kind of think about this. And so sharing this with you all and being thoughtful that this could be posted online, you're going to be listening to this on podcast, is part of this open reflection. And I actually wrote an email on like 3 reasons why open reflection is really, really powerful. And this is really kind of not just about me creating content. I just don't like the idea of creating content, but actually doing open reflection that people can actually see. And in Innovate Outside the Box, I actually talked about why this is a powerful thing. And I encourage people not just to read the book, and I don't just encourage people to do this with Innovate Outside the Box, but any of the content I create, I encourage them to share their thoughts, share their ideas, and ask them, what are you going to do with this information? Even in this podcast, I'm bad about this because, like I said, I'm not doing this for clicks. I'm not doing this for engagement, for lack of a better term. I'm doing this to share some ideas with you, but hopefully make myself better. I probably should say like, hey, write your questions in the comments, do this stuff too, right? But I think the hope is not about manipulating an algorithm as much as it is, I want people to kind of make their learning their own. And so in Innovate Outside the Box, I actually wrote this sentence. While you read this book, I encourage you to reflect both openly and privately, to dig deeper into the information. I've seen many posts on social media encouraging people to read 100 books in a year. Reading is an essential part of being a learner, but from my perspective, it is better to read fewer books, reflect deeply, and create something with the knowledge that you have accumulated than to speed read and change nothing. So that part, that focus on actually getting people to create something with the content is really, really important to me. And I think that's why I want to share it. So I want to share kind of these 3 ideas on why open reflection is really important to me. And I actually said, why is this important? And I'll give you kind of, I'm doing 3 and 3 here. So I try to do this every week, and I try to do this whether it's my podcast, whether an Instagram post where I do like a photo dump and talk about some of my learning, in my email I write each week. I wrote these 3 reasons. It forces me to take time to reflect on my learning each week. And then the second one is perhaps someone is going through something similar to what I am experiencing, and my reflection can help someone else somehow. And then lastly, and I feel this is the most important one, over the last few years, I've realized that my posts are similar to an online diary that I'm leaving to my children that might help them after I'm gone. Full disclosure, I really, over the last 5 to 10 years, I haven't really focused on teaching. I focus on learning and leadership because I don't think it matters if you're in education that you need to learn no matter what you do. Right? So of course it applies to educators. That is literally the job, is to learn and to help other people figure out their pathway forward. But really, I also think about what will my kids see in this space. I actually saw my brother, Couros, he posted something about a digital legacy. And he said, like, what are you actually leaving to people after you're gone about this? And it's something I've talked about for a long, long time. And it's one of the reasons I don't get in fights on the internet. I don't get into arguments with, with people. And I'm really thoughtful because I'm always thinking about like, what will my kids see, after I'm gone? I know maybe that's a little bit of a terrible thing to kind of say is a little, I don't know, terrifying. Anyways, but I just think what we leave online is like, will live long past us. So it's just something I'm really thoughtful of. So here, I'm going to just share really quickly 3 reasons why open reflection is beneficial practice. And I wrote an email about this, so I'm reading my points, but then I'll just kind of like off the top of my head share some ideas. And the first one is you consider the viewpoints of others when you know others can see your viewpoint. And I actually have talked about this a ton, about this idea of having a 360-degree view of learning. And there's a really powerful quote from Clive Thompson that I've loved years ago, and I've always utilize this. I probably mess it up, but this is the actual quote, is that having an audience can clarify thinking. It's easy to win an argument inside your head, but when you face a real audience, you have to be truly convincing. Someone actually posted when I shared this, they're like, why are you trying to convince someone? Why are you getting arguments? And that's not the point of the quote to me. It is really kind of do you really are you able to articulate your ideas, but also think about some of the pushback, some of the challenges of what you're sharing, and then address them before they actually happen? And this is why I talk about this as a 360-degree view of learning. When I write blog posts, you'll notice often I'll say, here's A, B, and C. What I'm not saying is D, E, and F. Because sometimes it's like, hey, what's the thing that we're missing here? What's going to be the pushback to this? So I'm always trying to think about that when I'm sharing a new idea, a new strategy, a perspective, because it makes me kind of empathize what we're doing. And that's why I love the Clive Thompson quote, is that idea that when you actually know everyone can see what you're posting, you are not only more thoughtful of what you share, but you're trying to understand the perspective of others. What is the hole? What is the deficit in your thinking? And can you address it before before someone brings it up to you? So just something I want to think about. The second point I talk about is the idea of brainwriting. And I share this, that having time to reflect in isolation brings more to a collaborative setting. I really love the idea of brainwriting, and I'll give you an example of this. In that cohort, and not only in the cohort that I'm doing virtually, but also in my professional learning opportunities, I don't ever share content and then ask people to turn a talk immediately. I might do that later in the day or later in a workshop. Before I let anyone kind of talk to each other, and I know I don't really let, and this is a 360-degree view. Well, what do you mean let? I'm not letting anyone talk to each other, but I guess before I encourage people to have conversations with each other in their groups, with their neighbors, I actually ask people to write some reflections and ideas down. I give them time within the day to actually do this. I don't, make them use their break for that. I provide these extended breaks. The reason I do this is that people need to kind of articulate their own thinking before they can contribute to a space. So if you look at, for example, a group of people that you know in your district, and let's just say you identify like 5-10 of them, but you think about, I ask any question, would you say like, well, these one or two people will always lead the conversation? And why is that? And oftentimes it's because those people, they process really quickly. It doesn't mean they're the smartest people. It means that their brain works really quickly. That's a little bit me. I can kind of do stuff on the spot, but there's another reason I actually talk very quickly. I am terrified of silence. I get really uncomfortable with silence. So when no one's talking, I will just fill the space. And sometimes I'll throw a joke out there. I'll say something just to get, because I just feel, and this is easily one of my biggest weaknesses as a teacher, is wait time. I have zero wait time. I really struggle with it. And I know it's an anxiety. It's a thing that I actually have to deal with and get better at. And so sometimes what we do is that when we create those spaces, we don't give time to process their own thinking before they contribute to the group. You always hear the same one or two voices. Whereas if you give people time to process their thinking, they're more likely comfortable to actually contribute to that space. And here's the other thing about this. You also get better responses from the people that process quickly. Giving them time to think is not something that's detrimental, right? And it might give them a better idea and understanding. They might, even though they might have initial thoughts, they might have an opportunity to dig deeper into them and actually, connect in a way that they couldn't if they didn't have the time. So when you're, doing a professional learning, when you're actually teaching someone in a classroom, giving learners the opportunity to process their thinking before they contribute their thinking is really, really powerful. A little controversial opinion coming up. I think we over collaborate in education. I'm not saying collaboration is a bad thing. I just think that sometimes we focus so much on working with others that we don't actually have an ability to develop ourselves. And what can you truly contribute to a space if you don't have time to articulate your own thinking, right? If you have no time to process your ideas, but then you're asked to contribute to a group, it's really, really hard to do that. So I don't think it's about actually not collaborating. I think it's about making sure that we have some time in isolations to develop our thinking so we have better things to contribute to those spaces. And I actually wrote this in the newsletter. When we have time to process our thinking in isolation, we do much better in a collaborative setting. So the last reason, the third reason, and I wrote this in a quotation that's not mine, is what is obvious to you is amazing to others. This is one of my favorite videos, and you can actually see it in the link down below. It's from Derek Sivers. It's from a video called Obvious to You, Amazing to Others, which I actually just said. But this is a really powerful quote from the video. It is one of my favorite videos, and it gets people to kind of really think about when they share to these spaces. It gets them not only to think about their own process, but it might help someone that you don't know would actually benefit. And Sivers shares this in the video. Everybody's ideas seem obvious to them. I'll bet even John Coltrane or Richard Feynman felt that everything they were playing or saying was pretty obvious. So maybe what's obvious to me is amazing to someone else. Hit songwriters often admit that their most successful hit song was one they thought was just stupid, even not worth recording. We're clearly bad judges of our own creations. We should just put them out there and let the world decide. Are you holding back something that seems obvious to share? And I've heard this shared so many times in the video that I can kind of hear his voice sharing that. So this idea is that sometimes when we post our ideas out, we are sometimes going through something that actually someone else we don't know is going through, and it might actually benefit them. You as a principal, a teacher, no matter where you are in your career, there's probably something you're doing that is just so, everyday and routine for you, but could actually be really beneficial to someone else. And so not only does this actually really benefit you, this process of open reflection, it also benefits someone who you might not know that you're actually helping. And that's why I've actually really kind of focused on sharing these ideas. And I can tell you, since I really kind of started focusing on blogging, putting my ideas out there, I have become a lot more in depth in my thinking. I think it's really improved my learning. It's made me think a lot deeper about what I do and why I do it. So I think this process of open reflection is really, really beneficial. And so I would love to know your ideas on this. What's something that maybe resonated with you? And if you want to write in the comments, and I said I don't usually do this, but hey, maybe this is the time to start. I encourage you because I would love to learn from you as well. There's a really great opportunity here, but maybe you don't want to write in the comments, and that's okay too. But maybe if there's something that stuck out to you, maybe clip something from here and write something about it on Instagram, or share something about on a blog or a podcast of your own, whatever. But can you take some of the ideas I share and actually create your own spin on them, actually go deeper into them, and maybe provide a strategy of something you can use in professional learning, in your own development? It's just something to think about. Anyways, I just want to share some ideas with you. I'm actually just about to jump on another podcast with a wonderful superintendent in Oklahoma. I feel really blessed to be here today. Thank you so much for all you do. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you learned something today. Take care.